Hello, my name is Kelly Doyle-Bailey, and I'm the Social Emotional Learning Specialist for the Maine Department of Education. Thank you so much for joining me for this breakout session of your conference. The name of my session is From Risk to Hope and Why Social Emotional Learning is so important for all human beings. I'm going to start by just sharing what you all know just innately by the nature of what you do, is that it's indisputable children learn best when we treat them as human beings and when we really recognize that we don't teach a subject or a grade level, we teach people, and what we're doing really is to build those connections, those emotional connections, so that every single student in our schools feels safe and connected and valued. So I'll start by just talking a little bit about, this really beginning with us as adults really being very aware of building our own emotional intelligence. And, this isn't something that's brand new. It has been here for many, many, many years. Social emotional learning, that concept, social emotional learning, is relatively new, but emotional intelligence, dates back to Aristotle, where he said that educating the mind and the heart is really truly what we do when we educate, and educating the mind without educating the heart is no education at all. And so I think that as we talk about the theme of hope and optimism, especially during this very uncertain and unprecedented time in our lives and in our children's lives, it's really important for us to make that connection, that really truly connecting when in a congruent way, when the mind, the body, and the heart are all in a regulated, connected state, then we're going to be able to build those bridges that help us truly reach our students where they need to be reached. CASEL, for those of you who don't know, CASEL is the Collaborative of Academic Social Emotional Learning, and they define SEL for education in this way. That SEL is really the process through which children and adults understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy and compassion, can take perspective of other people, maintain healthy relationships, and can make responsible decisions. So those are the five elements of social emotional learning as CASEL puts them out. And really it begins right with our own self-awareness, and all of what we do is really important to make sure that we are doing this through an equity lens, and really looking at helping all students see themselves in our schools and to be able to see representation of the self. So it really means that we need to make sure that we're examining the importance of various social identities and maintaining and finding positive meanings in all social identities, and really grounding ourselves in understanding and appreciation for cultural diversity and responsiveness. So self-awareness really, in order for us to maintain that optimism and confidence and hope, is that we really have to have an accurate self-perception. I know that I am realistic about my strengths and my limitations, and I don't see my limitations as failures or faults, but that this is not what I'm good at yet. And if I'm truly interested in it, can I find the reserve to move forward with it, or can I find people who can help me to build that understanding in areas that I might see as a limitation? I also, when I'm looking at my self-awareness, I really need to be able to truly and effectively and honestly unpack my own biases and my own conditioning, so that I can really truly be aware of who I am. So that is also leading to self-confidence. When we have hope and optimism, we're building our self-confidence, that I believe I have what it takes to influence my own destiny, and I can lead others effectively. As school counselors, this is what you do all the time, making sure that we're checking where are we with our self-confidence, what kind of stories and talk do we say about ourselves to ourselves, and do we give ourselves an opportunity to be in a state of presence and relaxation and self-assurance. Again, optimism is believing that most experiences will help me learn and grow, and I can see the positive even in so-called negative situations. And this is what we call growth mindset, but it isn't something that we just get just because we're living. It's something that we cultivate, and it's through the intentional teaching and learning and growing through social emotional learning, our own self-awareness, that truly starts to develop for us. And so we begin with that definition of how are our thoughts and our feelings manifesting in ourselves, and how does that impact my ability to cope with environments and situations. And so that's truly what the second competency of social emotional learning is, and it's that self-management. It's my ability to navigate and shift my thoughts and my feelings and my behaviors in a healthy way in order for me to help others and myself navigate situations. This is really important for us to really take a step and just remember that when we're hardwired for reactivity, when we're hardwired for fight, flight, freeze, when we're wound up or dysregulated, and we're not in a calm, regulated state, then we're basically no good for anyone else. So we really need to look at what our central nervous system is doing on any given day, and remembering that we're only human. And in order to maintain this optimism and this hope, we need to be able to recognize at its onset when our parasympathetic system and our sympathetic system are dysregulated, and realize that this all is about our understanding of the neurochemistry of our own brain and body. So if I'm flipping my lid, if I'm feeling frustrated, if I'm feeling overwhelmed or anxious or upset or embarrassed, or really upset, embarrassed, anxious, mad, frustrated, then I recognize that for what it is, a feeling, and that feelings come and go depending upon what is happening in my environment. And this is so critical for us to recognize for ourselves, because if we can't recognize when we're becoming dysregulated, then we will judge the dysregulation of others, and we'll also see it reflected back on ourselves. So we have these things called mirror neurons, and whatever's happening within our central nervous system, we will put out there energetically for others to mirror. You see this all the time in babies with moms. If I'm regulated and cooing and back to the baby, and I'm giving the baby the input that he or she needs, then that baby will respond because he or she will feel safe and connected. But if I'm not able to stay in a calm place of reassurance, then that will impact that baby. So really just having a basic understanding and knowledge of our own central nervous system, what happens when we go into fight, flight, freeze, or submit, how the neurochemistry for calm, meaning we have dopamine and serotonin and the norepinephrine, in good ways, that helps us to stay in that just right place. But if we're in that toxic fight, flight, freeze all the time, and we're hyper vigilant, then we have to do something to change that. And the first way that we do that is by recognizing that we are there. Oh, this is what it feels like to be angry. Oh my gosh, this is what it feels like to be so irate or so embarrassed. And notice what's going on with your heart, or notice what's going on with your body. And so we'll get into some things to help with self-management. This is just a basic, back to brain basics, that I like to talk about with most folks that when I talk about hope and resilience and grit and growth mindset, it really all begins with, am I able to tap into my prefrontal cortex? This is where empathy and insight and responsivity is. Emotional regulation lives there. My intuition and my attunement, my ability to take in information and say, yeah, okay, I can handle that. And that only happens when my limbic system supports that. But if I am in that fight, flight, freeze because I'm afraid or in survival mode, then I am having levels of cortisol, norepinephrine, and adrenaline running through my body in such a way that I'm not able to tap into my prefrontal cortex. And when I know this, when I truly know this about myself, and I have coping strategies to help calm and reconnect, then I'm able to see this better in my students and in my own children and my family members and my colleagues. And something really beautiful happens in that I'm able to tap into the empathy and compassion because I know it is true for myself. I don't see it as a fault, and that I'm not able to reach that child or that student, and I'm able to get a better perspective of what it might feel like to be that person right then and there. So self-regulation is really owning our own emotions and recognizing our own emotional map. It helps to provide that underlying framework of understanding and recognizing the emotions of other human beings. And this skill set requires our ability to carefully listen and observe other people within a varied, well, for all human beings, and having some perspective of what it must be like to be a person from another country or to speak another language, how difficult it must be to navigate that. So it means we have to be present and paying attention on purpose. So impulse control is really important and critical. How do we do that? What do we do? Can we think before we act? Can we think before we speak? When our emotions are running high, remember, our PFC will slow down and maybe even go offline, and the amygdala is really in charge. So a couple of different ways that we can help implement those things or to cultivate that is delaying our own gratification. And that means really being rooted in being grateful for what we have in this moment. And maybe not everything is perfect and wonderful, but if we can sit in quiet and recognize the things we can be grateful for, not the things we wish we had, or, I'll be okay when this happens or after this happens, and we're in this crisis mode. And when we are living in constant states of urgency, it's truly tricky and difficult to get to that place of truly being grateful for just the simple small things, our health, the health of the people we love, our eyesight, our taste buds, just the small things that can give us true senses of groundedness. Gratification and being grateful is one of the things that is most studied as closely being linked to hope and resilience. Coping, right? Making emotional skills, regulation skills to help us adapt to the response of a variety of things such as worry and anxiety and fear. And so we need to make sure that we are taking time to seek support from our family, from people we love and trust. And if things are getting too much for us to handle, reaching out to people who are especially trained in this sort of things so that we can, tap into the mental health needs and not to be feeling discouraged or upset, because everyone has emotions. And when we don't lean into the emotion and see what the emotion is or what's going on with that and what it's trying to tell us, then we often are rejecting it. And when we reject that, it just really changes the neurochemistry again. And it's really just deeply rooted in fear. So this is where hope and love and courage and resilience and determination comes into play, when we really tap into our own emotional regulation. Social awareness is something that really can give us a great deal of hope. Now more than ever in this political climate, it doesn't matter what side of the fence you're on, we need hope in our country. We need hope we need to have hopeful messages of humanity. And so when we cultivate our own ability to be socially aware and culturally responsive, and we see this as not just our job, but truly an investment in humanity, then we're able to build empathy and compassion, and we're able to build perspective taking for other people. So when we look at that through an equity lens, think about how many people come to this country because they are hopeful for, a fresh start and freedom, and the things that they may not be able to, that is just not there for them in the countries of origin. And so when I look at this, the hands that are just holding one another, and I see that world, it gives me hope. It gives me hope that people can reach across, the things that divide us, and really see that we are uniquely we are uniquely united, right? And so just making sure that when we're in our schools or when we're in our homes, that we don't just focus on the divide, but we focus on the collectiveness of who we are as human beings, that we are really here to be beacons of light and hope and resilience for one another. So this is, when I think about how we teach cultural responsiveness and talk about grit and resilience for our students, we really need to look at this through the lens of how would all people like to feel. And when we do that, when we see social emotional learning as a primary prevention and a trauma response and readiness type of intervention, then we're really looking at cultivating the social awareness piece, and not just black and white, and not just looking at our biases or lack thereof, or we're really looking at developing necessary skills for human beings to be able to think what it might be like to walk in somebody else's shoes, and not through sympathy, but through empathy and compassion. And that only really happens when you allow yourself to cultivate your own empathy for yourself, your own compassion for yourself, and having respect for who you are, loving yourself regardless of the stories or the negative talk that maybe you have said to yourself, and really starting with just being grateful for this opportunity to be on this planet, and right in this moment, even though we're in the moment of COVID-19 and we've never taught in a pandemic or lived in a pandemic before, we have a lot of resilience when we can sit in a space of empathy and compassion for ourselves first. I am doing enough. I am enough. I can get through it, and that only happens when we're quiet and we can appreciate where we are right in this moment. Perspective taking for other people is so significant and important. I just wanted to show you under the surface. This is a very quick empathy film, and it was profound and had a profound impact on me. That short is called Under the Surface. It's an empathy film. And one of the things that I know can be very damaging to human beings is when we take everything that happens around us so personally, and we get emotionally tied into an outcome, thinking that it is because of something we did or didn't do. And when we build in our on purpose, an intentional, purposeful cultivation of our social awareness, beginning again with your own self-awareness. What am I feeling? Where does that feeling live in my body? How does that feeling direct my behavior? Then when we work on that and recognize what the feelings that are coming up, what's happening to us, and then we can ask ourselves, is this truly about me, or am I reacting or responding to something somebody else is doing or saying? And oftentimes we can become so emotionally tied to other people's reactions that we don't understand, or we lose the perspective of what it must be like to be that person experiencing those things. And sometimes we make assumptions when the assumptions have nothing to do with us at all. So that can make us oftentimes incredibly hopeless and feel like, what is the point, and why am I trying so hard? And maybe we even slip into some judgment about ourselves for not being able to have the right tools to be able to connect with somebody, but also maybe it clouds our judgment about about that other person, because we only are operating on the things we see and not the things we may or may not know. So again, sitting in empathy and compassion and having it for yourself first allows you and me to become much more empathetic and much more compassionate for what other people are going through, whether we know what it is or not. So I need to go back here. Sorry, there we go. So we need to, again, think about one of the things that will help us do that is really looking at our implicit biases, and really take a peek at, what is the conditioning? What are the teachings that we've had along the way? Where am I rooted in fear? And so I just wanted to put out there for us, one of the things that was very enlightening for me was to tap into my own unpacking of implicit biases. And Harvard has a wonderful implicit bias test that you could just go on, and there are, I think, 15 different subtests, and it is truly eye-opening, and really helps with cultivating your social awareness. Appreciating diversity and teaching these skills to yourself and to other students and to all students, to really understand what it feels like to belong. I know that so much of our research about mental health in youth goes back to maladaptive behaviors and a sense and moving towards that, because there's this sense of isolation and not being seen and cared for and respected for the truly unique human beings that each one of us is. And so when we appreciate diversity and we celebrate differences and we make sure that our students see themselves and are represented across universally, when we're in classrooms and we see pictures of all humans, all different people, different colors of skin and preferences, that then there's this sense of I'm here and I'm cared for, and that gives others hope. So, and that impacts our relationships, right? Castle defines healthy relationships as being contingent upon the human capacity to establish and maintain healthy and rewarding connections between a diverse group of individuals. And so that means we have to unpack our biases so that we can see that we are humans, we all have very similar needs, and those needs are really back to connectedness. Um, we are human beings, not human doings. And so we have this need to connect and to lean in. And when we feel isolated or rejected, then we will find our group who will accept us. And so when we think of social emotional learning as a preventative, primary prevention, trauma informed, then it allows us to really look at each one of those layers. And if we are building a culturally responsive community, then we're allowing all students, all human beings, to be seen and cared for uniquely, and that will allow each of us to feel connected and to develop healthy relationships. So responsible decision making is it really requires our cognitive regulation. And so, if we feel hopeless, or if we feel like we're drowning, or we feel like we're just can't even stand up for another day because the circumstances are too much, remember that your prefrontal cortex, which is that thinking brain, and that emotional brain, is not going to be able to make responsible decisions because you're going to be guided through survival. And so this means we have to take care of ourselves. So we have to pay attention to ourselves on purpose and recognize when our mind is wandering and we aren't present and we aren't able to focus and sustain attention to other people. So for just one moment, I'd love for us just to stop for a second, because I'm sure even in the time that you've been listening to this webinar, that you notice that your mind has wandered. You've been having a thought or engaged in a memory, or you're making plans, maybe you're making lists. Notice whether you've been just going through the motions, if there have been or just going through, I've got to get this one in so that I can get to the next thing. So let's just stop for a second and allow yourself to feel grounded and centered. Just become unbusy just for a moment. Notice your feet anchoring you to the floor. Feel your toes inside of your shoes and feel your feet making contact with the inside of your shoes. Feel your body being held by the chair. Allow yourself to be unbusy with your hands. You can close your eyes if that's comfortable, or soften your gaze. And you still may notice the mind is racing, and that's okay. Recognize that's the purpose and the job of the mind. But we are so much more than the sum of our emotions and the busyness of our mind. So notice your breathing in through your nose and out through your mouth. Notice as you breathe in through your nose, your belly and chest expand. And as you breathe out, everything contracts and resets. Allow your body to be heavy and warm. And if you notice you are engaged in a thought or a memory or a plan, anchor that by saying, I'm thinking, or I'm remembering, or I'm planning. And give yourself an anchor word such as breathing, or here, or calm. Just Take a couple more slow, deep breaths. Allow yourself just a moment to reset, reframe, and refocus. Just bringing yourself back slowly to this physical place, wiggling your toes, rolling your wrists, stretching your body, standing up if that feels comfortable for you, twisting, blinking your eyes, and just setting a mindful intention to pay attention on purpose. How do we do this for our students in the midst of a global pandemic? How do we do this? What are the things that we need to do in order to help our students stay calm and connected and regulated? Remember that a calm brain will help calm a brain. A calm body will help to calm a body. Nobody ever calms down by being told to calm down. You know, breathing on purpose is the number one way, non-pharmaceutically, to calm the central nervous system. If you know Bear Shea, our mental health and school counselor coordinator at the state, he says it's obnoxiously helpful when we take a moment to mindfully breathe. If you don't like the word mindful, think about it as taking a moment just to reset, just to become unbusy. We live in a world of hurry up and urgency, and we live right now in persistent crisis. And so when we're always in that place of urgency and we don't give ourselves a minute to become unbusy, and we don't take intentional breaks, and we don't teach our students about the brain and embed mindful moments and teach empathy and compassion and self-care on purpose, then we're all just walking around dysregulated. And that doesn't feel very hopeful. And so just prioritize the whole child. And that means prioritizing yourself as well. We were once upon a time the little girls and little boys of yesterday. We all have varying degrees of regulation and dysregulation depending upon the buffers that we had available to us when we were little people. We always remember grown-ups who connected with us, who saw us and cared about us. Those people could be teachers or grandparents or parents or siblings, aunts and uncles, friends. We always remember the people that cared about us and made connections and took time to truly see us. We equally remember those people who didn't, who dismissed us or shamed us, who didn't see our value, who were too busy. We remember those people. And we never remember all the people in between, the people that were just passing through. We don't remember those people. Those people don't give us hope. When we prioritize the child inside of us and we honor where we've been and we take care of who we are, we get enough rest, we drink enough water, we exercise, we get a breath of fresh air, we take a mindful moment to breathe on purpose. We recognize when our bodies are becoming dysregulated and we breathe. We seek help if we need it. We take care of the inner person. We become congruent with our body, our brain, and our mind, and our heart. And then we're good for kids, big and small. Every single child in our school deserves our best. And in order for us to be our best and to prioritize the whole child, we have to prioritize ourselves. So when we do that, then we can be excited and passionate about being a help to our schools and broadening the existence of defining success, school success. We are not just here to get kids to the next grade and to graduate them so that they can go to college or the military and the workforce or whatever. We are here, right? We are here for so much more than that. We are here as educators and school counselors to care about humanity, and to help all children grow up to be good people in the world. We need to transform our learning of SEL so that all children feel safe and supported and have inclusion. We need to build the structures that support student relationships, help students see that you're more than a teacher or a counselor, that you're a person who cares about them. You do that so well. Create school-wide cultures that encourage student voice and agency, affirm cultural backgrounds, let every single student see themselves represented on the walls of our schools, and support restorative practices so that everybody can know that a mistake doesn't mean that we're outcast and we'd never get to repair the harm. Encourage mindfulness or study it. Begin with yourself. SEL for Maine, or SEL for me, is social emotional learning with intention. It is a set of resources, 450 modules. We are getting ready to launch this. I hope by the time that you see this webinar that it will be launched, and Bear has shown it to you in your content time with him. It is a resource that you can use for your students, big and small, to help them to cultivate all 5 of the competencies and to become gritty, resilient, grounded, centered human beings, people who have purpose and see their purpose and have value and know they are valued. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this webinar. Please check out SEL for Me and look at the modules, register, and make sure that you, if you so choose, take advantage of everything that is there to help you to bring social emotional learning practices into your schools. May you all be well, safe, healthy, and happy, and have a good rest of your conference. Thank you so much for asking me to be part of this. Take care.